Aristeus. Hypasus, a high king of the Lapiths, whom the naiad Crusa bore to the river god Peneus, married Clytonope, another naiad, and had by her a daughter, Siren. Siren despised spinning, weaving, and similar household tasks. Instead, she would hunt wild beasts on Mount Pelion all day and half the night, explaining that her father's flocks and herds needed protection. Apollo once watched her wrestling with a powerful lion. He summoned King Charon, the centaur, to witness the combat, from which Siren, is it Siren? That's what I'm saying, as usual, emerged triumphant, asking her name and whether she would make him a suitable bride. Charon laughed. He was aware that Apollo not only knew her name, but had already made up his mind to carry her off, either when he saw her guarding Hypasus's flocks by the river Peneus, or when she received 2 hunting dogs from his hands as a prize for winning the foot race at Peleus' funeral games. B. Chiron further prophesied that Apollo would convey Siren overseas to the richest gardens of Zeus and make her the queen of a great city, having first gathered an island people about a hill rising from a plain. Welcomed by Libya to a golden palace, she would win a queendom equally beneficent to hunters and farmers, and there bear him a son. Hermes would act as a man midwife and carry the child, called Aristus or Aristeus, to the enthroned Hours and Mother Earth, bidding them feed him on nectar and ambrosia. When Aristeus grew to manhood, he would win the titles of Immortal Zeus, Pure Apollo, and Guardian of the Flocks. C. Apollo duly took Siren away in his golden chariot to the site of what is now the city of Siren. Aphrodite was waiting to greet their arrival and bedded them without delay in Libya's golden chamber. That evening, Apollo promised Siren a long life in which to indulge her passion for hunting and reign over a fertile country. He then left her to the care of a certain myrtle nymphs, children of Hermes, on the nearby hills, where she bore Aristus and, after a second visit from Apollo, Idomon the seer. But she also lay with Eris one night and bore him the Thracian Diomedes, owner of the man-eating mares. D. The myrtle nymphs, nicknaming Aristeus Agris and Nomus, taught him how to curdle milk for cheese, build beehives, and make the olester yield the cultivated oil. These useful arts he passed on to others, who gratefully paid him divine honors. From Libya he sailed to Boeotia, after which Apollo led him to Chiron's cave for instruction in certain mysteries. E. When Aristus had grown to manhood, the Muses married him to Autonoe, by whom he became the father of the ill-fated Actaeon, and of Macris, nurse to Dionysus. They also taught him the art of healing and prophecy, and set him to watch over their sheep, which grazed across the Athamentean plain of Phthia, or Phthia, I think. No, it's not Phthia, it's Phthia? Yeah. And about Mount Othrys, and in the valley of the river Apidanus. It was here that Aristus perfected the art of hunting, taught him by Siren. F. One day he went to consult the Delphic oracle and was told to visit the island of Ceos, where he would be greatly honored. Setting sail at once, Aristeus found that the scorching dog star had caused a plague among the islanders in vengeance of Icarus, whose secret murderers were sheltering among them. Aristeus summoned the people, raised a great altar in the mountains, and offered sacrifices on it to Zeus, at the same time propitiating the dog star by putting the murderers to death. Zeus was gratified and ordered the Etesian winds in future to cool all Greece and its adjacent islands for 40 days from the dog star's rising. Thus the plague ceased, and the Ceans not only showered Aristus with gratitude, but still continued to propitiate the dog star every year before its appearance. G. He then visited Arcadia and later settled at Tempe, there all his bees died, and greatly distressed, he went to a deep pool in the river Peneus, where he knew that Siren would be staying with her Nade sisters. His aunt, Arethusa, I can't say it. Can't even. Why am I trying? Arethusa, Arethu. Yeah, that's what I'm going to call it. Arethusa heard an imploring voice through the water, put out her head, recognized Aristus, and invited him down to the wonderful palace of the Naiads. These washed him with water drawn from a perpetual spring, and after a sacrificial feast, he was advised by Siren, bind my cousin Protus and force him to explain why your bees sickened. H. Protus was taking his midday rest in a cave on the island of Pharos, sheltering from the heat of the dog star, and Aristeus, having overcome him despite his changes, learned that the bee's sickness was his punishment for having caused Eurydice's death, and it was true that when he had made love to her on the river bank near Tempe, she had fled from him and been bitten by a serpent. Aristus now returned to the Naiads' palace, where Siren instructed him to raise 4 altars in the woods to the Dryads, Eurydice's companions, and sacrifice 4 young bulls and 4 heifers, then to pour a libation of blood, leaving the carcasses where they lay, and finally to return in the morning, 9 days later, bringing poppies of forgetfulness, a fatted calf, and a black ewe to propitiate the ghost of Orpheus, who had now joined Eurydice below. Aristus obeyed, and on the 9th morning a swarm of bees rose from the rotting carcasses and settled on a tree. He captured the swarm, which he put into a hive, and the Arcadians now honor him as Zeus for having taught them this method of raising new swarms of bees. J. Later, distressed by the death of his son Actaeon, which roused in him a hatred of Boeotia, he sailed with his followers to Libya, where he asked Siren for a fleet in which to emigrate. She gladly complied, and soon he was at sea again, making northwestward. Enchanted by the savage beauty of Sardinia, his first landfall, he began to cultivate it, and having begotten 2 sons there, was presently joined by Daedalus, but it is said to have founded no city there. K. Aristus visited other distant lands and spent some years in Sicily, where he received divine honors, especially from the olive growers. Finally, he went to Thrace and supplemented his education by taking part in the mysteries of Dionysius. After living for a while near Mount Haemus and founding the city of Aristium, he disappeared without a trace and is now worshipped as a god both by the Thracian barbarians and by civilized Greeks. Hold on. How long is that one? No. Yeah, I'll keep going. Footers. 1. Aristeus's origins have been embroidered upon by Pindar to flatter a descendant of Battus, who in 691 BC led a colony from Thera to Libya, where he founded Cyrene and was the first king of a long dynasty. The Cyrenians claimed their ancestor Aristus. According to Justin, Battus, tongue-tied, was only his nickname, as the son of Apollo, because Apollo had been worshipped in Thera, and the port of Cyrene was consequently called Apollonia. Nope. Apollonia, yeah, but Cyrene was a mythological figure long before Battus's time. Her associations with the centaur shows that she was goddess of the Magnesian horse cult imported to Thera, for Chiron's name also appears in early Theran rock inscriptions. The myth of Idamon's birth from Cyrene and Ares refers to this earlier goddess. 2. Myrtle is originally a death tree, and the myrtle nymphs were therefore prophetesses capable of instructing young Aristus, but it became symbolic of colonization because immigrants took myrtle boughs with them to demonstrate that they had ended an epoch. 3. Aristus was a cult title of Arcadian and Scian Zeus, and elsewhere of Apollo and Hermes, according to Servius. Hesiod called Aristus a pastoral Apollo at Tanagra in Boeotia. Pausanias 9:22-1, Hermes was known as ram bearer, and fish were sacred to him at Phera in Achaia. Thus, a tomb painting at Cyrene shows Aristus surrounded by sheep and fish and carrying a ram. His wanderings are offered in explanation of the cult title Aristus, which occurs in Sicily, Sardinia, Chios, Boeotia, Thessaly, Macedonia, and Arcadia. The dog star is the Egyptian god Thoth, identified with Hermes, who was known as Aristus by the Scenes. 4. His raising of bees from the carcasses of cattle has been mistold by Virgil. They will have swarmed rather from the lion which Cyrene killed, or which was killed in her honor. This myth, like that of Samson's bees, which swarmed from a lion's carcass, seems to be deduced from a primitive icon showing a naked woman tussling amorously with a lion, while a bee hovers above the carcass of another lion. The naked woman is the lion goddess Cyrene, or Hephaestus the Hittite, or Anatha of Syria, or Hera, the lion goddess of Mycenae. And her partner is the sacred king, who is due to die under the midsummer sign of Leo, emblemized by a knife in the Egyptian zodiac. Like Theseus and Hercules, he wears a lion mask and skin and is animated by the spirits of the dead lion, his predecessor, which appears as a bee. This is springtime when bees first swarm, but afterwards, as the midsummer bee goddess, she will sting him to death and emasculate him. The lion, which is the sacred king himself, the lion which the sacred king himself killed, as did both Hercules and his friend Phyllis in the Peloponnese, or Cyzicus on Mount Dindymum in the Sea of Marma, or Samson in Philistia, or David at Bethlehem, was one of the beasts which challenged him to a ritual combat at his coronation. 5. Virgil's account of Aristeus' visit to the river Peneus illustrates the irresponsible use of myth. Protus, who lived at Pharos off the Nile Delta, has been dragged into the story by the heels. There was a famous oracle of Apollo at Tempe, which Aristus, his son, would naturally have consulted. Arethusa, I think I said that right. Arethusa, a Peloponnesian stream, had no business in the Peneus, and Aristus is shown different chambers in the Naiad's palace where the sources of the Tiber, the Po, the Aino, the Phasis, and other wildly separated rivers are kept. A mythologically absurd conception. 6. Exports of oil to Sicily will have been more profitable to the Cretans than that of olive grafts, but once Hellenic colonies had been founded on the southern coast in the late Mycenaean times, olive culture was established there. The Aristus who visited Sicily may be identified with Zeus Morius, who was responsible for distributing grafts of the sacred olive trees descended from the one planted by Athene on the Athenian Acropolis. He may also have introduced the science of beekeeping, which came to Athens from Minoan, Crete, where professional beekeepers had a bee and a glove as their trade device and used terracotta hives. The Greek word for bee bread, Cerinthos, is Cretan, and so must all the relative words be, such as Ceron, honey balm, Serenos, waxen, and Seraphis, bee moth, a kind of locust. Sir, in fact, whose name also spelt car or care, came generally to mean fate, doom, or destiny, multiplied into Ceres. Spites, plagues, or unseen ills must have been the Cretan bee goddess, a goddess of death and life. Thus, the Sphinx goddess of Thebes is called by Aeschylus the man snatching, sir. Woo!